Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight, I've got 4 disturbing true stories, including strange cryptid encounters and other high strangeness, all occurring in the state of Virginia. So if you enjoy true stories of unexplained phenomena and cryptid sightings from real people, then do me a favor and poke that like button aggressively. Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video. I upload 3 times a week, and all videos are free of mid-roll ads as a new release. So now, grab your gear and let's ride to Virginia. In this first story, a couple are at a Virginia lake snorkeling and camping for the night. They later notice an unknown being stalking them wherever they go in the area around their campsite. What was this thing?
Hey TB, this is the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced. This happened about 4 years ago when my boyfriend and I were still fresh into the relationship. My sister had recommended to me a snorkeling trip for a fun thing to do with him. So we went to Lake Phoenix, located in Brunswick County, Virginia. It's a quarry surrounded by a campground that's best known for its crystal clear water and diving. There's apparently a helicopter and school bus that people dive down to see. My boyfriend and I decided to go camping for the night. While we were checking in, we separately both got a bad feeling about the place, but each kept it to ourselves until after we left. So at first, it was a really good time. We snorkeled in the shallow area of the quarry, and although the depth of the water was a bit uncanny, I was still enjoying myself. The water is 65 feet deep, so once you swim out of the shallow area, it immediately dropped off and was pitch black. This is actually where I realized that I'm terrified of water. Besides the dark, deep water while you're swimming, there's something really scary about a lake that is perfectly still. I assume because it's a quarry and the water doesn't have any current. My boyfriend and I are winding down our night and we're back at the campsite. We're camping in a grassy patch, a bit down a hill from the road. Our tent is pitched in a wooded area that our campsite is extended to. And just across the green is a campsite that looks well lived in, but our neighbors were apparently out. So we're making hot dogs over the fire when the neighbors get back. It's nighttime now and they immediately go to sleep. I'd say 20 to 30 minutes after they get back is when things started to get spooky. My boyfriend and I were chatting when we noticed a dark figure watching us from up the hill. Because of the shadow of the fire, we couldn't actually make out any characteristics of this figure. We knew it was staring directly at us, though, almost hiding behind our neighbor's truck. It had watched us for what felt like forever, until it started walking down the road again. We both simply watched it in dead silence, watching it walk behind the trees. The same ones connected to our campsite, but that also went in between us and it. I anticipated each time I'd see it walk forward, out from behind a tree, but then it suddenly stopped appearing. I was totally freaked out. Where did it go? I watched my boyfriend looking at what happened and thinking the same thing, but he had shrugged it off, and naively, I did too. We actually ended up forgetting all about it and went to the quarry late that night. It was beautiful seeing the stars reflected against the still water, but the deep, now all black water was terrifying to say the least. We soon walked back to our campsite, laid in our tent, and each had a cigarette. I soon began to get an uneasy feeling, which I was trying to ignore, telling myself it's because of the darkness. After some silence between us, my boyfriend says to me, "Do you feel like we're being watched?" So I said, "Why would you say that?" I was half joking, but serious because I was truly scared. My boyfriend wanted to get out from the tent, so we're standing by the car, and I get this stupid idea that being in the middle of the field is probably the safest place for us. My logic being, if someone was going to come up at us, At least we'd see them coming. So then we're in the middle of this field when we see a similar looking shadow, like the one from before, staring at us. It must have been only about 20 yards away. We both notice it while walking, and it's walking in the same direction as we are. We change directions, and so does it. We tell one another if we change again, and it does too, then we're booking it back to my car. When we change, it follows, and so we take off running towards the vehicle. I watched it from my seat as it slowly walked back into the darkness while still staring in our direction. My boyfriend at this point says to me, "Let's get out of here." I agree, but all of our camping gear is outside, so we quietly get our things together, not trying to freak the other one out. The weirdest part of this story, in my opinion, is the next part. My headlights wouldn't work, and there was a weird fog all over the windshield that didn't go away no matter what we did. We had to drive out of those woods with only parking lights and this strange fog over the window. We could barely see, but somehow we got out of there. Weirdly enough, the fog went away as soon as we got to the gas station. We got home around 1 a.m. and I told my father the story the next day, and he said we got out of there okay, or else we could have been attacked. Apparently 2 people have died at this campground while snorkeling, which I found out after we returned. My boyfriend and I think it was either a person stalking us or some kind of upright creature. We've kind of settled on the creature because of what happened. It was an unexplained incident. Signed, Angela.
The Brunswick County, Virginia area is known for Bigfoot activity, so I'm not sure what this couple really encountered out there. Next, a Virginia couple is driving near their home after a long day trip when they suddenly encounter, well, a red-eyed, white, shaggy, spectral dog that they believe they hit with their car. What was it?
Hi, Biker. I recently came across your channel, and I wanted to forward my story to you. There was a spectral dog that hung around the road that I lived on a few years ago. It's well known to the locals as haunting the end of the road, and there are 2 types of encounters. Either it appears as a warning of an impending accident, even having prevented a few, or it shows up after the accident has already occurred. Typically described as a large, shaggy white dog with glowing red eyes, seen at a distance in the nearby farmers' fields. It wasn't so far away from me. My wife and I were driving home from a long trip to Washington, D.C. We live near South Hill in Mecklenburg County, Virginia, and we were both very tired, and we were trying our best to keep each other awake. She talked to keep my mind going, and I talked to keep her awake so, well, she could keep me awake. We had turned onto the road and had 1.5 miles to go before we were home when my wife suddenly screamed, "Look out!" And we both saw something canine, white, large, and shaggy, run out in front of the car. I slammed on the brakes and swerved, but it was too close, and we were moving far too fast to avoid it. I pulled over to look for the dog that I must have hit and found nothing. No blood, no fur, no injured dog, no damage to the bumper. Absolutely nothing. We gave up looking and eventually drove home. The adrenaline surge kept us going until we got home, and for an hour past that, we were finally ready to go to bed. I told a coworker about the encounter, and that's when she told me about the spectral dog and that I likely ran into that. Ever since that encounter, a few other neighbors have told me about the same phenomenon. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Henry.
In this next email, a young couple is on the Appalachian Trail in southern Virginia when, well, they become aware of someone or something following them. The next few days were a terrifying experience that they won't ever forget.
Hey, Tattooed Biker. Back in 2018, my girlfriend and I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail in Virginia. We had hiked other parts of the AT north of Virginia, but had never gone this far south. The section we took ran through George Washington and Jefferson National Forests from Roanoke County to Giles County. It is one of the more remote parts of the trail, which is exactly what we were looking for. We gathered our gear, and we made our way to the Virginia Creeper Trail to begin our journey. It was early October, and the air was crisp and cool. Perfect hiking weather with beautiful scenery. The majority of the trip was pretty uneventful. Just your typical hike. But our last few nights is where things got really strange. On this particular portion of the trail, you're supposed to camp on the trail or at a designated shelter. We didn't really want to run into other people and didn't want anyone coming up on us in the middle of the night. So we decided to ignore those suggestions and find our own little spot somewhere off the trail. After a little searching around, we finally found a spot a little ways off the trail in the middle of a small clearing. We set up camp, cooked a little food, and talked for a while, and then snuggled up and went to sleep for the night. Sometime around 2 a.m., I was awakened by my girlfriend, shaking me violently and telling me to get my gun. Someone's outside walking around our tent. She told me that she woke up to what sounded like someone right outside the tent running a knife or something along the side while circling us. When I'm hiking, I carry a .45 automatic because you never know exactly who or what you might run into when at a remote location. I got the gun out of my pack, and then we sat silently, listening for any sounds. After a while, we heard the snapping and crunching sounds of someone or something heavy walking in the woods out behind our tent. I got the flashlight and silently made my way out of the tent. Our fire had gone out by then, so it was nearly pitch black. I told my girlfriend to stay put while I checked it out. I didn't flick the flashlight on right away. I waited to see if I could hear any more noises. After a few minutes, the sounds were bipedal, and I turned on the flashlight and flooded the area with light. I thought I saw someone move quickly behind a tree. I yelled out and told them to go away, and that I was armed. I kept the light on the area with my gun drawn, and slowly approached the area where I thought I'd seen the figure. Then suddenly from my right, I hear what sounds like someone running away through the woods. Someone big. I spin and face my light that way, and then from the original spot, I hear who or whatever there was take off into the woods. There's no way I'm giving chase, so I quickly return to the campsite. I end up sitting guard outside our tent in the darkness until daybreak. The next morning, I looked around a bit for signs of who or whatever it was, and I discovered a large print in some soft, moist dirt not far from our tent. It was way too big to be mine, and it definitely wasn't my girl's. This freaked me out as it confirmed that someone or something, perhaps more than one, had been stalking our tent. I kept it to myself because I didn't want to freak her out any more than she already was. At this point, we were pretty deep in, and we still had 2 full days left. When it came time to set up camp, I found a spot near a cliff where we could place the tent in a small overhang that would prevent anyone from coming up behind us. The whole day up to this point, I had a feeling that we were being followed. I had no confirmation of this, as I hadn't seen or heard anyone else, but it was just this gut feeling. We set up camp and made some food, and then finally retreated into the tent. I kept the gun right next to me, and I assured her that if I slept at all, it would be with one eye open. After a while, she finally drifted off to sleep, and I stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the woods at night. I was awake for a few hours, just waiting to see if anything was going to happen. Although at some point I drifted off, and I awoke sometime later to what sounded like someone going through our stuff outside the tent. I grabbed my gun and I woke my girlfriend. From the faint glow of the fire, I could see a large silhouette against the tent. There was really someone out there. I yelled out to them that I was armed. They stopped what they were doing and bolted. I came out of the tent gun drawn and ready to shoot if necessary. Our stuff was strewn all about the area. I walked to the edge of the woods in the direction whoever was out there had fled. There was a creek nearby, and I walked to the edge, and there was a small trail running alongside it. Down the creek, I could faintly see two small lights. They looked like small lights, but then they flickered, and then I saw 6 more emerge from the other side of the woods, and I realized they were eyes, and they were blinking. I quickly told my girlfriend to start packing up whatever she could, and that we were leaving, now. We packed up everything of value, left the tent and a few other items, and headed back onto the trail in the middle of the night. I kept hearing something, talking off in the woods, a weird chattering sound, and hearing large branches snap for quite a ways. I kept looking behind us every few seconds to make sure nothing was coming up on us. It was completely nerve-wracking, and if something happened, we were still a long way from anywhere, and quite literally on our own, since we hadn't seen another hiker the entire time we'd been out there. I really felt like we were in serious danger. We had been walking for quite some time when I heard something in the woods behind us. As we rounded a corner, I turned and I saw someone step out onto the trail and just stand there, watching us. It was just as the sun was coming up and there was barely any light. I couldn't make out any features, just a large, tall, broad-shouldered silhouette. I stopped and looked at them for a second, and then asked them who they were and what they wanted. They just stood there silently watching us, and then turned and sort of melted back into the woods. We picked up the pace and kept going, looking back over our shoulders every so often. We never saw them again, but my gut told me they were still there for quite a ways. We eventually reached the end of the trail and got to where we had parked my girlfriend's car. By this time, we were totally exhausted, but somehow, we had made it out of the Virginia woods without becoming a victim of whatever was following us. Signed, Alan.
That section of the Appalachian Trail is well known for Bigfoot encounters and other unexplained incidents, including the strange not-a-deer sightings. It's difficult to determine who or what was actually following them out there on that camping trip. And speaking of, in this last email, a Virginia college student who's out late at night encounters a possible not-a-deer that is sprinting on its back legs, coughing and screeching. Was it really just a strange deer or something else entirely?
Dear Biker, I live in a mountainous, south-central Virginia in a pretty rural area. My house is a townhome in a neighborhood right next to a middle school. I've lived in this house for over 10 years, and I frequently went on walks during the daytime, all around the neighborhood itself, plus the surrounding buildings and woods. But I've never gone on a walk at night here. After starting college, I got very accustomed to taking walks around my campus at night when the weather's nice. So now that I'm home for winter break, and Virginia is in one of its weirdly warm winter weeks, I decided that I may as well go on a walk at night, since it's a safe area, and night walks are almost daily routines for me now. So I leave my house at around midnight, and I walk over to the middle school, and I sit down on the track. The track is a concrete oval going around the soccer field. So I'm just sitting there, relaxing and listening to some music with one earbud in. I also had a lit candle on the ground in front of me, which sounds kind of weird of me to have, now that I type it out. Lighting candles while I sit and chill somewhere outside is just a habit that I developed from having a ton of candles and being unable to light them in my room at college. That's when I hear what sounded like a cough. So I instantly stop my music and I start looking around. I don't see anything, but I'm extremely paranoid and I'm on edge even though everything seems fine. I just sit there doing nothing for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then I start settling back down. So now I'm almost fully relaxed, but then I hear that cough again. And then I see something sprint on its back legs across the field, faster than I've ever seen anything move before. And it gets to the other end of the field, and then continues, standing there on its hind legs. I couldn't see it super well because it was dark and a bit far away. Since I had just heard the coughing and it was running on two legs, I initially thought it was a person, but when it was standing still, I could see that it was much too large and weirdly proportioned to be a human. It was also screeching the whole time, like a loud horror movie creature screeching that actually started making my ears ring. It looked like its back was to me, so I took the opportunity to pack up and run home. I'm physically disabled and I can move around just fine, but not very quickly. I literally cannot think of another time in my life when I ever moved that fast. The only sort of paranormal thing I believe in is plain old ghosts, so as soon as I got home, I texted all my friends, and I Googled all I could. Everyone I texted just reassured me that it was probably just injured or disease, since that can make deer act weird like that. So that's a little reassuring, but at the same time, I'm Googling about deer running on their hind legs and screeching their heads off. And while it's a somewhat documented occurrence, none of the pictures and videos on any website are anything like what I saw. I've read descriptions of deer running on their hind legs, and I've watched videos of it, but none of the videos that I've seen really match up with just how strangely fast that this thing was moving. Like it was basically just a blur while it was running past me. Signed, Mitchell.
And there it is. All the unexplained encounters and true stories of high strangeness from Virginia that I have for you this evening. So, what's your thoughts on these? I can't wait to read your theories in the comments below, but please keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have a strange experience or an unexplained encounter that you want to share, just send it to the email address in the description, and well, your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks for riding with me tonight. I really appreciate you. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.